What's up, everybody? Welcome back to another video. Today is a very beautiful, very snowy day in Bozeman, Montana. It's a great day to buy another Montero. So I got my buddy's truck here. I got a trailer all hooked up. We have to drive about 30 miles to the next town and pick up a Montero that I'm buying. I've already checked it out. It looks like a really good deal. It's not currently running, hence the trailer, and the roads are pretty bad. So we're gonna head up there and hopefully load it up safely and bring it back down home. So we're making our way over the pass, and as you can see, it is super snowy outside. Roads are actually okay. We got the trailer in tow, but we got to haul this thing back over this pass. So hopefully we can make it there safely. It's only a little buried in the snow. All right, so let's pull up right here so we have a straight shot. Oh, dude, these things weigh so much. Okay, I think you'll have to pull a little bit forward.
Not great.
Come this way.
Okay.
Hold up. Let me readjust.
Yeah, let's readjust for the rear. These things are just a little too long, I think. Oh yeah, this is going great.
Don't say that yet.
Too late, I already did.
Just snap.
Send it. I say pull a little further. Let's get this right.
You want this?
That's good right there, actually. All right, we just picked up the Montero, loaded it up, really easy. This thing's looking good. Now, you can't really tell it's from the snow, but it's in really, really good condition. Obviously, the road condition's not that good. So we've got to head back to Bozeman and get this thing unloaded. Oh, it's that wreck that we saw earlier. That's my guess. All right, the Montero is back home. We got here totally safely. My buddy had to split, so now I've hooked up this car trailer to the Montero, and I'm gonna get this unloaded into this spot. Okay, it's a few days later and the Montero is thawed out, and this is when we can really see how good of condition this 91 really is in. So obviously the paint's a little wet, it's raining here today, but you can see the paint's in pretty good condition. The body is really straight on this side, coming around to the back. Notice not a whole lot of damage. There's a little bit of a dent right here. I don't know if it was rear-ended or something, but that's something to keep in mind. The door seems to be sealing though. On this side, again, really straight, in really good condition. It looks like someone's really taking care of this car. The one thing about this, the frame is dirty, so I need to power wash that or clean it just to figure out what kind of condition it's in, but I did scratch a little bit off and it doesn't look like any rust. Coming around to the front, there's a little dent in the bumper. It's classically missing the top of this emblem, but I'll probably just get a new grille for it. And the paint is the paint's clear coat, and a little bit of the color, it looks like, is coming off on the hood and on the roof. There is a sunroof. It doesn't leak, but the motor doesn't work. So let's get inside here and see what we're working with. underneath the hood, you can see this motor's not running. It's actually halfway disassembled, and that's because somebody blew a head gasket on this. The previous owner, they said they blew a head gasket, brought it to a shop, kind of a tragic story. The shop guy took it all the way apart, said, oh, I don't want to deal with this, and it's been parked for over a year. So everything's kind of disassembled. The rest of the motor's in the back. We'll take a look at that in a second. But this is the V6. Now, if you've watched my videos, you know I actually swapped one of these around. I didn't actually rebuild it from the crank up, but I swapped one of these around, so I'm pretty familiar with it. And I know it's pretty easy to pull this out, especially with the heads off already. So this is what we're working with in the engine bay side of things. Things look pretty good. Things look like they're in pretty good order on this end. The cylinders have been sitting for a bit, so there's a little bit of surface rust here. I'm gonna pull that out and either get it honed out or just hit it with a quick ball hone, and that should clear up right away. But before I do that, because it did blow a head gasket, I'm actually gonna check this with a straight edge to make sure this doesn't need to be decked. If it does need to be decked, no big deal. I'll send it off to the machine shop for a month or two and have that taken care of. Now let's head to the back and see what came with it as far as the top end of the motor goes. All right, now in the back, you can see all the business side of the motor. So it's got the intake. It looks like everything is here. I haven't dug through this enough to find out where all the bolts are. They might be in here, but this is the whole top of the motor. Now, there's a few things to note. In looking at these heads, they look like they're in okay shape. The previous shop said they had a crack in them. I don't know if I trust that, but either way, there's a couple nicks in it. Right here, you can see this looks like someone just dropped it, which is really unfortunate. And that's deep enough that I don't really know about decking these heads. It's probably possible. There's some more in here that go below the surface. It's a little hard to tell on camera, but there's actually like craters in there. So I found a pair of new heads that are gonna bolt right up, and it's actually just as cost effective to start completely over as it is to deck these down. So that's gonna be the route that I go. I've got those on order. In addition, there's a crack in the manifold. Every single Montero that I've ever taken apart has a crack in at least one of the manifolds, so I know that one's bad. I'm not 100% sure about that one. And the rest of the stuff, I'm gonna figure out as I go. We're gonna do new gaskets, new bearings, new rings. We're gonna freshen this thing all the way up. I wanna bring this thing back to roadworthy, back to reliable. And this seems like a really good base for it. Let's check out the interior and I'll show you what I'm working with there. So the inside of the car is in pretty good condition. Now, it's got some pretty high miles, 242,000 miles. So that's quite a bit, but these transmissions are known to be bulletproof. These things are really sturdily built, and the interior is in pretty good shape. Little tiny tear here, the rest of it's looking good. This armrest is super beat up, but the passenger seat looks really good. It is the automatic transmission with the manual transfer case, like they always have. It does have an aftermarket stereo, and then this light switch right here for the fog lights that I'm gonna guess don't work. But this is the interior right here. Sunroof, like I said, non-operational, but it doesn't leak, so I'm excited about that. Coming around to the back seats. The back seats are in super good condition. I think I'm missing the headrests, but I'm not sure that I'll need them. I might actually have some extras. I'll have to look. Floors are in good shape, no sign of leakage. It has the manual windows, which I'm personally a huge fan of. It just makes more sense in a rig this style. And then it's got my favorite feature. It's got these windows that pop open. Oh man, I just love that feature. So anyways, there's the interior. I have no idea the running condition of this. The person who sold it to me said the transmission was working well. I have no idea if the AC works, the power steering, whatever. So I'm gonna have to figure out all of that as I go. As I put all of this stuff back together, fingers crossed, it works really well. But right now, I'm gonna pull this into the garage, pull that block, and start the process of the motor rebuild. Come on, baby. Oh, yeah. Okay, so the block's tore down, and you can very easily see which cylinders had the bad head gasket. The rest of these are covered in carbon deposits, and these two have been steam cleaned. So at some point, the head gasket went bad here, whether it's in the head, the gasket. Hopefully it's not the block. There is a lot of meat on this block, so I don't think it's that. But you can always tell if you have a bad head gasket because one of the cylinders is going to be super clean. So I'm going to get the pistons pulled out of this. I'm going to get this deck smoothed down, and we're going to go ahead and see if this is flat. And if it's not, I'm going to send it to the machine shop. If it is flat, we're going to go ahead and start reassembling. All right, I've got the heads torn down over here. That one's good. I'm going to leave that one alone for now. This is the damaged one. So after doing some looking into this, I discovered that one is actually completely flat. That one is good to go. It has no signs of head gasket leaking or any kind of damage. So I'm going to leave that one the way it is. I could replace it, but honestly, it would be the same. It's flat. It's good to go. It seems like it's sealing, so I'm going to leave it. This one, however, seems to be the issue. And in getting into this, I'm looking at this and I'm thinking that this damage, it probably happened before the head gasket went bad. And this is probably the cause of the head gasket. That crack or that divot is kind of deep in there. It looks like it's been going through a couple cycles, and you can see it's clearly in line with the gasket, which would be pushing and exchanging water back and forth in between this. So I think that's the problem. That overheating caused this crack. And so rather than try to save this, rather than deck this all the way down and run it, I went ahead and got this one. You can see it's brand new, and so it's totally flat. It's good to go. It's made by ITM, and I've had good luck with these guys' heads before. So at this point, I've pulled the valve train out. I've got all new lifters and seals. Here's all the intake valves. Those are going to get lapped into this head and be ready to go. One thing that really surprised me is just how beefy this valve is for this motor. This is a 3-liter. These do not make a lot of power, but that's a pretty substantial valve. That's not going to go anywhere. That's not going to heat warp. It's not going to bend or get anything weird going on with it. That is a pretty substantial valve. Now, granted, it's only 2 valves per cylinder. So a lot of the motors that have multiple valves per cylinder, like 2 intake, 2 exhaust, they can run smaller ones and they can get away with it. But that just kind of surprised me. These Gen 1s are really built to last. And so I'm excited to get this one back on the road and have it be reliable for lots and lots and lots of years. Maybe another 250,000 miles. We'll see. So I'm going to get to lapping those valves. With the valves lapped, I moved on to replacing the valve stem seals. After the valve stem seals, I reassembled the camshaft as well as the valve springs. Moving on to the block, I installed the main bearings and checked them with a plastic gauge to make sure they were within spec. After checking the crankshaft and installing it, I moved on to gapping the piston rings and installing the pistons back into the freshly honed cylinders. I used assembly lube on everything to make sure that it wasn't going to run dry during the first startup. Once the pistons and rods were in, I put the heads on and got them torqued down to spec. After that, I installed the oil pump, the oil pickup, and the oil pan. Once the bottom end was done, it was time to move on to the front of the motor. I started by installing both cam sprockets and the water pump. Next, I moved on to the side of the motor and replaced the motor mounts. I threw the timing belt on real quick, and this is where I started to run into my first issues. The previous owner didn't give me almost any of the bolts that came with the top half of this motor, and so I had to dig through my parts bin to find parts that would fit into these bolt holes. Some of them were really easy, others of them were really hard. Once the front half of the motor was assembled, I moved on to the injectors and replacing all of the seals incorporated with those. Onto the top half of the motor, I put the injectors in, new intake gaskets, and secured the intake manifold. After that, I installed a fresh set of spark plugs and torqued them to spec. Once the spark plugs are in, I connected all the leads and the distributor. With the bulk of the motor work done, I hoisted it up and got prepared to install the flex plate. I got the flex plate on and torqued everything to spec. After about a month of working on this thing, it's about ready to drop in. Now, as I mentioned, some of the problems with buying a car in boxes like this is that you're going to be missing some hardware and you're going to be missing some things. So one of the things I was missing was these timing covers. I had to wait for that. This bolt hole is threaded really weird. I don't think it's necessary, so I'm not going to put a bolt in there. It's very well supported. I would rather just not mess with it rather than do something funky with it. And the other thing I'm waiting for is this driver's side exhaust manifold. Now, this was broken on the one I got, so I foolishly just threw it away, thinking I could get a replacement, but it turns out replacements are back ordered for another couple weeks. So I obviously can't fire it up because this is missing, but you can put that on inside the vehicle. So at this point, I think I'd rather drop it in and work on it inside the car than leave it around in my garage. So I'm waiting on that for sure. The other thing that I know I'm waiting on is the air intake. And so this has been a very hard piece to find. I need the tube that goes here, as well as the MAF sensor and the MAF sensor housing. And so I won't be able to fire this up even if I get that. So I do still have some parts to wait on. However, as it is right now, it's ready to drop in, so I can start getting it bolted up. I can start getting it attached to the bell housing, as well as get the accessory drive on and have it a lot closer to being ready to go. So I'm gonna get this thing hoisted up, call some friends over, and drop it in.
Stop.
After about an hour of struggling with getting motor mounts aligned and the bell housing bolts aligned, we finally were able to drop the motor in and get everything connected. After about a month of searching, I have finally located this part. So when this was taken all apart, somebody did not include this when they put this back. So this was taken apart by a mechanic and they must have this somewhere in their shop, but I don't know who it was. It's been a couple of years. So I had to locate one. It took me about a month to find this. So what I needed here was this half of the air filter housing, which includes the MAF sensor and this intake tube. I found one that was like 150 bucks on eBay, which was just way too much. So I found this one in a junkyard 2 hours away for 35 bucks, had a buddy bring it over to me, and now it's ready to go. So I'm just waiting on that exhaust manifold, which I just got a notification that it should be here any day now. And once that's ready, we can put it on and we can fire this thing up for the first time. All right, this manifold is installed. So this thing is ready to fire up. I've got oil in it. I've got coolant in it. We're gonna prime the system. So what I've done here is I've disconnected the coil. So we're gonna give it a bunch of cranks, make sure that there's fluid going throughout the whole thing, make sure oil and coolant are getting circulated. Then we're gonna fire this thing up for the first time. I have never heard this thing run. I've never driven it. I have no idea what I'm getting myself into, but I'm really hopeful that that engine rebuild goes well and this thing fires up. I am a little worried about this distributor. I haven't had the best of luck timing these, and so hopefully it fires up right away. I think I've got it right. If not, I'll have to come back and deal with that. But without further ado, let's fire it up. Now the coil's connected, let's go for it. That is not timed correctly. All right, first test drive in the Gen 1. It's alive. Vitals are looking good. It's got heat for sure. And surprisingly, the headlights work. So I'm just gonna go and bed in the rings. Make sure everything's running properly. Take it for a few laps around the block. Make sure it's not gonna die on me, but hey, this thing's back on the road. Let's go. Right, here we are, done with the test drive, drove 20 miles, idling at like 550 RPM, smooth as silk. Sounds pretty good, shifting great, running cool. This thing's mint. After the initial test drive, I decided to daily drive this Montero to make sure the motor was broken in properly and it was running reliably. Early on, I did a couple frequent oil changes to make sure it was getting fresh fluids, and I just put miles on it, checking the vitals to make sure that it was running well. After about a month of daily driving and 500 miles, it was finally ready to call this project complete. And I am so excited about how it turned out. So here it is, everybody, the final product, the finished 1991 long wheelbase Gen 1 Montero. I found this thing basically abandoned, parts missing all over the place, hadn't been running for a year and a half. I took it all the way down, I rebuilt the motor, and now it is roadworthy, it's registered, it's reliable, it is ready to go. So I am super excited to bring this back to life, to put this back on the road. This is a great looking car. I've done a few modifications since putting the motor in. One of them you'll notice right away is wheels and tires. So I picked up some of these 16s because there's a lot more tire options for it. And right now I've got some studded snow tires on there. And in the back, I've got some 33-inch, a little bit wider, a little bit bigger tires, and they fit this rig really well. So I'm really excited about that. It's handling better in the snow. It's been super fun to drive around in the Montana winter. And so that was one of the modifications I did. Along with that, I also had to do a few upgrades of things that were just worn out. So one of the things I did is I replaced the shocks in the front and the rear. I took care of those. Those weren't too bad to do, but they definitely needed to get done. The previous tires were worn all sorts of weird, and so it was really good to check that off. And another thing I did is back here, the gas line that goes from the filler cap into the gas tank was actually leaking. It had cracked over time, and so I quickly swapped that out because it was leaking gas whenever I filled it up. Another thing on the front end is replacing this idler arm right there. That had a ton of slop in it, so I fixed that up as well. One thing that I didn't point out on this earlier is this has a full skid plate package. So it's got a transfer case skid plate, it's got a transmission and front drive shaft skid plate, as well as the two front skid plates. So this thing is fully armored out, except for if you wanted to put sliders on it and obviously a different front or rear bumper. But this has got a great spec for this RS package. So this has been months in the making, and I know some of you are asking, what is the plan for this Gen 1. Now, I already have a Gen 1, a short wheelbase that I call Little Blue, and I love that thing. And that one is gonna continue to be in the fleet. So this one doesn't really have a place, but that's okay because I've had buddies who have been asking about getting a reliable Montero for years now. And so I've been talking to one of my buddies. He loves this style rig. He loves how old school it is, and he's gonna be buying it from me. And he's got big plans. He's gonna do a rooftop tent. He's gonna build out the back with boxes. He's gonna redo the interior, and he's gonna make this an adventure rig for him and his wife. And so maybe in a year or two, I'll be able to do an update and show you guys what he's done. He's also planning on doing front and rear bumpers because he works in a metal fab shop. I think it's gonna be the perfect platform for him. He loves how old school it is. He loves how simple it is. And I love that he's got such a vision for it. So I have loved driving this car around. I've loved building it. I've loved the looks I get when I drive through town. This has been such a fun rig for me. And so it's gonna be hard to let it go, but I feel better knowing it's going to a good buddy of mine. I'm gonna see it around and it's gonna get built out right. So I hope you guys enjoyed this video. If you did, let me know by hitting the like button or leaving a comment. And hopefully I'll see you guys on another video where I restore another Montero. I'll catch you guys on the next one.